welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? Grab your coffee, get comfy, and let's talk. And I want to talk about some reasons why the power grid will fail and could fail. Okay? Now, what if it does fail? Okay, well, it's never happened in the U.S., but some countries have had widespread power outages, and it's happening right now as we speak. Okay? And it could happen by way of like cyber attack, right? I mean, it could happen for many, many, many different reasons. And it seems like most power outages, regardless of the extent, have a short duration and are only an inconvenience. But there's a problem. And a few of the problems we're going to discuss. The first one is a crumbling infrastructure. Now, this may be an overstatement, but to refer to the U.S. power grid as crumbling. But in many parts of the country, that's exactly the case. The North American power grid is old. And by that, I mean about 100 years old. Yeah. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now, the next one is the failure of complex systems. The North American power grid may be one of the most complex systems on Earth. And it's important to note that the power grid is just not about the U.S. The grid stretches across the U.S. and up into Canada, powering and ultimately affecting all of North America. On a basic level, the grid is composed of 3 interconnections, serving many states and provinces, with the exception of a single interconnection, which is in Texas. And the fragility of any interconnection was demonstrated in the winter of 2021, when weather extremes induced by climate change almost brought down the entire Texas interconnection. Yeah. So, while 3 basic grid connections may be simple, it gets a lot worse. Local power service providers are broken into subregions with the intersections, and these subregions are serviced by local utilities that have varying degrees of integrity in terms of the age, the connection of their equipment, and the power stations. But it gets more complex than just that. The power grid that exists today was first built right after World War II, from designs dating back to Thomas Edison, using technology that primarily dates back to the 60s, the 70s. Its 7,000 power plants are connected by power lines with a combined total of more than 5 million miles, all managed by 3,300 utilities serving 150 million customers. So, how critical is the grid? Well, power grid failure for 1 year would result in death of 9 out of every 10 Americans. The first to die would be people dependent on medical assistance, with the majority of dying from starvation. If the grid failure was unique to North America, it would also make the U.S. a prime and easy target for any rogue nation looking to take advantage. So we take it for granted. It's not just about losing lights at night, packing some food in the fridge with freezer into a cooler, wearing warm clothes, lots of blankets in the winter. Systems and services surrounding us are dependent on electricity, and without power, there's no grocery stores, no pharmacies, no gas stations, no hardware stores, no local doctors, dentists, traffic lights, banks, basic communication, water. Everything else we assume will also be available. Hospitals and doctors, they'll be overrun. Police, fire, overwhelmed. The continuing darkness of every night will bring lingering uncertainty and fears of what's to come in the morning. Now, the ominous signs. Major blackouts on the upswing. Over the past 2 decades, blackouts impacting at least 50,000 customers on the U.S. have increased 124%. Now, while customers in Japan, they lose power on an average of 4 minutes per year. Customers in America, upper Midwest, lose power on an average of 92 minutes per year. And customers in the upper Northwest lose power on an average of 214 minutes per year. Those estimates include extreme events like severe storms and fires, and those who have been increasing over the past 2 decades. And the durations are still being measured in minutes and hours, but over time the trend can easily lead to days and weeks, making matters worse, in that the vulnerability of our grid is growing due to the new and emerging threats. So, what are the greatest threats to our grid? Okay, the first one, cyber attack. So, you've got China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. They've all engaged in various degrees of cyber attacks over the past decade. And some of these cyber attacks have been launched against various utilities around the world, including the U.S. Just take the Colonial Pipeline. Remember that when that happened? It's the largest fuel pipeline in the U.S., and a ransomware attack resulted in $4.4 million ransom payment to a ransomware gang. How about Opel and Electrobus? It was February of 2021. Yeah. How about Delta Montrose Electric Association? Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Antwerp. And it just doesn't stop. Every day our power grid is being tested by foreign attackers, attempting to infiltrate and find ways of taking control and cutting our power off. The cutting edge of cyber warfare continues to be China. Unfortunately, our defenses against cyber attacks continue to be weak. It is believed, in fact, at the highest level of our intelligence community that China could shut down our power grid at any time. Now, the next one is physical attack. A physical attack involves the use of explosives, weapons, to physically attack and to destroy electrical grid generation equipment. What's ominous is that so many substations and transformers are located in remote locations with little or no security other than a chain link fence. No personnel are near many of these locations, and even something as basic as a security camera is often missing. Now, proof of this vulnerability occurred on April 16th, 2013. Shortly before 1:30 in the morning, one or more people methodically cut communication cables near the Pacific Gas and Electric Substation in San Jose, California, sprayed more than 100 rifle bullets, knocked out 17 of the 23 transformers before fleeing and avoiding capture. Yeah. Now the next one, something that we talk about all the time, an EMP. Now, EMPs originate from outer space or as a result of a nuclear detonation. Now, cosmic EMPs are rare, but the nuclear threat is significant. The next one, solar flares. Now, solar flares erupt from the surface of the sun on a regular basis. And there have been occasions when these eruptions have been so large, they result in a solar storm. It's been actually a common occurrence and often results in bright displays of the aurora borealis, and also have an effect on radio transmissions. Now, the next one is an infrastructure failure. And it doesn't take the drama of an attack or catastrophic or takedown of the grid. The age of the American grid, combined with the intermittent and often random repairs, further compromise and complicate the antiquated system that could simply collapse in on itself. All it takes is a massive failure at one utility to cause power sharing from other utilities to attempt to supply additional power. As the demands become greater or cascade or domino effect, I mean, it was first predicted during the Y2K scare, if you remember that, could cause the entire grid to crash, largely due to its continuously failing infrastructure. Now, the next one is climate change. There was no consideration of the effects of climate extremes when the grid was designed and has continued to expand. Now, the standard assumption was that the summers would be hot with a traditional range, and the same would be true for winter. But the idea of heat indexes of 100 or more happening on a regular basis was not part of the design equation. The polar vortex was something that happened in the Arctic, and its occurrence at southern latitudes was considered a fluke rather than a common occurrence. Storms were always a problem for the grid, but the frequency, the intensity of storms and hurricanes were also relegated to conventional norms rather than the extremes that we are now seeing. Flooding, landslides, wildfires were also miscalculated before the realities of climate change made them both frequent and widespread. Now, the last one, geological disasters, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis. Now, on March 11th, 2011, an earthquake off the coast of Japan generated a tsunami that struck Japan's east coast. The destruction was so devastating, and the failure of the Fukushima nuclear power plant not only revealed the vulnerability of power generation stations to disastrous events, but continues to have impacts on Japan to this very day. Even without a tsunami compounding the impact of an earthquake, the damage from an earthquake alone can be devastating and far-reaching. Weather typically affects power lines, substations, but an earthquake affects all components in the grid. Worse, the debris from landslides, collapsed buildings complicates any efforts to repair the grid, while efforts are directed towards clearing debris. So, how can you prepare for a total grid failure? Well, welcome back to the 19th century. That will essentially be the lifestyle for everyone following a long duration national grid failure. Homesteading will be the new normal, and self-reliance the only solution in a society with few manufactured resources. No easily accessible drinking water, few food resources, rare medical care, and few options for communication. Now, there are some priorities and preps, of course, but the most critical consideration is sustainability. Stockpile all you want, but any stockpile will run out someday. A good and properly packaged food, supply of seeds, and the knowledge of how to harvest seeds from future crops, then you'll have a better chance in the long term than a pantry full of canned goods. So, what are the priorities? Water. Okay. How do you store water? Well, instead of storing nothing but bottled water, how about water drums, rain catchment systems? Okay. Water purification filters. Water containers so you can transport water. Various hoses of various sizes with simple valves. Hoses are the transportation system of water. And if you need to funnel, direct, channel water from one location to another, you can do it best with a hose, yes? How about a swimming pool? How about a galvanized metal wash tub to do laundry? Knowledge. Knowledge is power. So the next one, food. Okay. 90% of the U.S. population is projected to die during the first year of a national grid failure, mostly due to what? Starvation. So begin with a stockpile. Enough food to last however long you feel you are comfortable with. Okay? Seeds, seeds, and more seeds. Learn how to garden. Okay? I have helped multiple people in my community start their freedom gardens. So, plant fruit trees. I showed you how to do air layering so you can take the fruit trees and the trees that you already have, so you don't have to go out and buy more trees, and start air layering the trees that you already have. Raise livestock, simple livestock, chicken, rabbits, fish. Learn to wild forage. Learn about food preservation techniques. How to do without refrigeration. Canning jars, canning equipment. Think about what you're going to need to cook your food in multiple cooking setups. With a total grid down. Learn how to cook. Hunting, fishing. Okay? All of this stuff I put in my newsletter, my monthly newsletter. Please sign up for the newsletter. Absolutely free. Absolutely. Now the next one is lights. Think. Lights. Power grid. No power grid. Lights. Candles. Kerosene lamps with other oils. Dual fuel gas lanterns. Solar lights. Solar power bank. Flashlights. Solar battery rechargers. LED lights. Solar panels. The link is in the description box below for the Opus solar power station. I don't make money off of that. My agreement was that you guys get a discount. That's all I cared about. Okay? Now we have a link for grid down communication through Retrievis. You get a discount. That's all I cared about. Okay? Use those links. Get your discounts, please. And also with the seeds, heirloom seeds through survival seeds. Get your discount with your seeds, please. Stock up. But knowledge is power. Get your brain functioning. Learn how to do this stuff and then spend your money, okay? The next is communication. Walkie-talkies, like the Retrievis, okay? And the Retrievis, reason why I love that Retrievis, you could put earphones in it so no one else can hear what's going on. CB radios, ham radios, TV antennas, so you can watch a little boob tube. Okay, hand cranked radios. Now what about heat? All right, for wherever you guys live, that's when it gets cold. Now most of us have varying degrees of winter weather. With climate change, the severity of winter weather can get worse. Without power, most traditional heating options, they're not going to work. You need to consider some pioneer methods of heating. One of the approaches are multiple off-grid heating sources in the hopes that the combination would compensate for the poor performance of any one heating option. How about a wood-burning stove, pellet stove, solar tiles, propane and natural gas stoves? How about amping up the insulation in your home? Plenty of blankets, quilts, winter clothing. All right, now what about keeping it cool? Like if you live here in Florida. Air conditioners, they're power hogs, man. If the grid goes down, I'm not hooking up my generator to that. So, got to get some good, like the curtains that I have. They block out the sun. Wearing light clothing. Using ancient techniques that encourage air circulation. Battery-powered or solar-powered fans. Getting a swimming pool. Water storage. Electrolyte powders. I wish I had a basement. I would live in the basement. Stay indoors. Now, what about medical considerations? Survival medication. Okay? Get your first aid kits. Think about specialized first aid kits for eye injuries, simple sutures, for burns, survival medicine chest for your OTCs. Get your prescriptions. Jace Medical. The link is in the description box below. For your discounts. I don't get nothing, and I made sure of that. A medical knowledge bank. Get your books. I have a lot of PDFs, a lot of medical PDFs. If you need those PDFs, email me. I'll give them to you. Take time to read and to learn. It's so important. Now the next is home defense. Prepare your home for the worst, but pray for the best. Okay? Additional locks and bolts. Fire extinguisher equipment, exterior solar-powered lights, tripwire alarms, fencing around your home, bulletproofing your home, a safe room, boomsticks and freedom seeds. And that's just a short list, man. Okay? There's so much more. How long could this last? Nobody knows. A year? Maybe longer. It just assumes that a rogue nation does not take advantage of the crippling effects of a grid failure and makes things worse. But then again, it may have been that same rogue nation that caused the collapse in the first place. Alright guys, I'm out of here. I love you. I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fear less.